Disclaimer before the start of the video, I've had the flu this last week, so if my nose is a bit blocked, if my voice sounds a bit all over the place, that's the reason why. Please bear with me as I try and get through this recording without making too many mistakes. If you know me well enough here, you'll know that I am a huge fan of Arabic numerals on watch dials. It's my obsession. I think there's such a great classic and modern edge, and brands can do so much when it comes to communicating this style and this design with their pieces. It's really a leg up that a lot of makers can have above their competition. And through that, there are watches available today that have embraced this style and this aesthetic and have become true icons. But the thing is, of all the sports watches and designs I love with that aesthetic, I have never been a fan of the HydroConquest, which is truly defined by the Arabic numerals and that arrangement on its dial. But just because I'm not interested in the watch doesn't mean that it's not a living legend. This is very much a diver of the 2000s, and it's been around for decades. And for many, it is the piece that gets people into the watch hobby, and that kind of reputation pretty much supersedes everything else. So this new HydroConquest GMT, it does many things better than its predecessor, lots of micro improvements. But comparing it to other names in its product line, like the Spirit Zulu Time, a really great design and one that has caught on well, it's become very popular. Also thinking about the brand that Longines is actively pursuing, and with an example like this, we can all agree it's Tudor. Does this GMT progress the HydroConquest line, or does it feel like one step forward, two steps back? Is there a lot of potential to this piece? And then, of course, there's an element to this watch's design that I think could have been changed and improved that would have made it far more appealing across the board. But that's the sort of thing we're going to look into. Longines has had their fair share of successful releases in recent years. And what they always deliver on are bulletproof watches with sturdy builds, sometimes excellent designs. I emphasize sometimes, but like with all brands, some can be hit or miss. But I haven't really gelled with anything that Longines has given us recently next to the Zulu Time that came out a year ago. A handful of watches that they've given us felt like they've reached too far. Other times felt like they have done too little. They continually find huge success in the Heritage Collection for good reason, and like I've said countless times before, they have one of the best back catalogs to draw inspiration from. But the HydroConquest goes back a long way. Before heritage watches and reissues were a thing, these pieces came out in 2007. And the HydroConquest has seen many evolutions over the last, how long is it? 16 years. Grief. And I must say, the previous models did look fantastic. Some of the earliest renditions with full Arabics on their dials, others with applied batons in between, so you had that nice blend of polished elements and applied with fully loomed components as well. We can see that the most recent generation of the HydroConquest, which was upscaled to 43mm, also did away with the last generation applied polished components, which has changed the presentation of this watch completely. And from this, it's opened up the HydroConquest dial a bit too much. That space was just so vacant. It shows you just how important negative space is, and when it's not occupied, how much of a difference it can make. And from it, even if you're not familiar with this watch, it feels less refined. It feels like something is missing. In a recent video I made a few weeks back, I talk about how Tudor is pursuing Omega and everything that it entails there. I'll link it in the corner of the screen. But at the same time, there were some very good discussions made about how Tudor is also being pursued by Longines, and I think that is absolutely correct. Looking at the modern landscape when we compare their designs, their heritage-inspired approaches, as well as their sizes and the applications of their watches, even down to their pricing structures, Longines is wholeheartedly pursuing Tudor. Now, GMTs are one of the most interesting and hotly debated subjects in this arena. How Longines and Tudor GMTs are very much going head-to-head and out-competing one another. And it has all the makings of a great rivalry because their designs are so good and the pricing is so good. They're accessible and offer a lot of watch for what you're getting. Through it, we're seeing how the GMTs from these different brands are adapting and evolving. And that's where the brilliance of the HydroConquest GMT steps in, because it is a far more established identity that Longines offers. Probably one of their best sellers of all time, as well as the fact that they're also going after Tudor on a technical sense. Very much being positioned as a dive watch first, but with that added GMT complication. These are all good things. Now, on paper, I really find this to be a fascinating proposition. The whole concept of a diving GMT has been explored before. This is not the first of its kind. But it is a far more utilitarian take on the standard HydroConquest line, for better or for worse. A positive or a negative, depending on how you see it, it's been simplified to an extent where it has lost some of that original HydroConquest DNA, which I think is unfortunate, especially it losing those Arabic numerals on its dial. It's one of those key traits that has defined this watch from the very beginning, and I'm saying almost 20 years at this point. That's something that shouldn't just be swept under the rug. But what Longines has done right here is consider space, size, text placement, proportions in general, and that's why it has become such an appealing watch so quickly. Now, on one hand, we can say it is quite a cookie-cutter design. There is a missed opportunity here that I think would have made it far more effective and better. But there are also some remnants of the previous HydroConquest collection, especially when we look at the handset and how that's been used. How the case has been reworked to the correct way, how the crown guards have been made smaller, but the bezel knurling remains the same. But let's cut to the chase. This watch could have been far more successful as a design, I think, when it debuted, with just a few changes, small changes, nothing monumental. The obvious areas that are sticking out the most are those round applied plots at the quarters, at the 9 and at the 6. These two are elements that have been carried over from the previous generation of the HydroConquest. I don't think they need to be there. Originally they were used and worked very well to mark off where these quarter Arabics would sit, but right now it looks like something is missing on this dial, that they ran out of horizontal batons to apply. So what would have made this watch far more universally accepted and just more balanced and better as an all-rounded design? I'm looking at a Rolex reference here, the 1655, the original Explorer 2. For all its outlandish and weird design elements from the 1970s, one aspect that has always stuck with me is its use of quarter plots and how they work in tandem with the elements on the dial. All that should have been done to make this HydroConquest look far more fresh, far more utilitarian, and just a better all-round design is to have larger applied rectangular batons at the 6, at the 9, and an extended, larger triangle at the 12. These elements would give it a far more harmonious look on the dial, but also complete the presentation of the now new HydroConquest GMT. And I feel like it's such a missed opportunity because it's right there in your face. There's hardly anything you need to do to this watch to make it a near flawless professional GMT watch. And dare I say that with these changes, a design like this would outlast so many other GMT watches that are currently on the market today. Keep the colors, keep the bezel insert, keep the size, the strap variations, but change those quarter batons, make them longer, make the triangle at the top of the dial just as large and just as long. And there you have a beautiful design that looks complete. And this is the plight of being a designer, is that you see this last 5% that could have changed its look completely. Not taken. Nevertheless, the HydroConquest GMT is set to be a successful watch, as it is right now in its current state. True to form like the original, it's being offered at a great price. It's a great size. There are tons of adaptations and changes made to this watch that makes it far more wearable as a modern watch. And Longines continues to be successful and to hit home runs because they're offering pieces here that are not only accessible and affordable, but at the same time, you're getting so much watch for what you're paying. And now, as well as a very proficient dive watch in the background, you're getting a Traveler's GMT component that doesn't dominate the overall presence of the sports watch. So in a lot of ways, I see that the new HydroConquest GMT is a great step forward. But the design guy in me always sees where there could be improvement. And this one, though it's a small adjustment, it could have made a sizable change to the presentation of this piece. And like so many things in life, sometimes the answers, well, they're right under our noses. So with all of those criticisms out of the way, I think this is going to be a successful watch from the brand. I just can't shake those quarter elements and how it would have changed the look completely. But hey, what can you do? It's also clear that there is a lot of potential with this watch, and it's most definitely chasing Tudor. The future of the HydroConquest is bright. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.